Welcome to the fifth episode of Trust a Badge. In this episode, I interview Officer Anthony. Officer Anthony is a police officer in Pennsylvania, and he has served for about a year now. In the interview, he describes his experience as a police officer and the views of policing in his municipality. I hope you enjoy, and we will start off with Officer Anthony introducing himself.
My name is Anthony. I've been a police officer for about a year in a smaller department on the outskirts of Pittsburgh. I grew up in a similar area. I just graduated the academy last year in June. So I've been a police officer for just about a year, and I'm enjoying it, having a good time. And yeah.
Would you say you're relatively new as a police officer?
Oh yeah, extremely new. I still have like my first incidents for everything. So like everything is still like primarily a first for me. I actually like just got done with my road training, so I'm finally by myself. So like now I've done everything, or not everything, but I've done some incidents, and now it's like, oh, it's still a first for me because I'm now doing this incident by myself.
And what encouraged you to become a police officer?
I always wanted to be a police officer ever since like I was a young kid. There was actually a time where I was like, oh yeah, I want to be an engineer, like, and then I sat through like one physics class and I was like, yeah, I can't do that. I don't know, just everything with the media and stuff, like seeing like everything gets taken the wrong way or something like that. So I really wanted the area that I'm working in.
And is policing in your area, like you said, the outskirts of Pittsburgh, is it different from other jurisdictions or municipalities that you know of?
Yeah, so area that I work in is not very, I don't know how I want to say this, but it's it's a higher crime area, I'd say that. So like there's a lot more incidents, and we have a higher call volume than surrounding townships, cities, things like that. So yeah, it's definitely different, but in the same thing, it's still the same job. It's just, we tend to do it more frequently.
And as you said, this is your first year being a police officer. Is there anything unexpected or is there anything different than what you thought it was going to be like?
Definitely. So I was so excited to get out there and do everything, and then you do everything or you do something, and then you have to do whatever you did, you have to do 10 times more paperwork on what you did. So it's definitely, paperwork is like probably 70% of the job, at least. You probably spend 70% of your time doing paperwork. I expected it to be a lot more like, oh yeah, we do all this stuff, and then you have to do a report, and then sometimes you have to do criminal complaint and all that stuff, which is done on another system, and then there's department forms that go with everything that depends on each situation that happens. So it's very lengthy with paperwork, but it's still the job that I thought it was going to be. It's just a lot more paper oriented.
I've heard that a lot with other officers saying the same thing. They expect it to be more on the field and more exploring with the community, and now it's just more of the paperwork that fills up their time.
Yeah.
Kind of pretty funny.
Well, you make like one arrest, and it depending on the arrest, like it could really lead into like 3 hours of paperwork, especially like a DUI arrest. It just takes, there's so many pieces of paper that have to go with that, and then the articulation just takes a while for me.
And as you said, you became a police officer to help the community and bring some change. And when you said that, that really does bring a lot care, because not only you, but I'm sure many other officers out there, they all have the same reasoning as to become an officer. But then at the end of the day, when you say, you have to do so much paperwork, how often do you actually communicate and socialize with the public and the community?
I make it a point to at least communicate and socialize with the public as often as I can. Even for me, like I always drive around with my windows down, because like people will say hi or like ask you a question, or you go into the gas station to grab a drink and somebody talks to you there. So I make it a point to, like, when somebody comes up to me, to talk to them, and I make it a point to go up to people and talk to them.
Oh, wow. So you're more
it's
prepared when it comes to that.
yeah, it's a small, you have a large impact on people when you're a police officer. So going out of your way to contact somebody from the community could really change their opinion or change the way they view police officers. So I try to do it as much as possible. And I know that there's a lot of people in my department that do the similar things. But there's also people on the other hand that I've seen people that just roll around with their windows down, and then it's just a different way to do it. But I want to do a community oriented job. I want to be involved. I want to be able to help people. It's a career. It's not a job.
I've heard that as well too, because it's not only a job, but so many other responsibility
Yeah,
with the job.
absolutely.
And you have to make sure, and you just have to make sure that you're doing the best you can with that responsibility. Talking to the community, like for example, with your windows rolled down, I think it brings like a safer environment for everyone, because everyone knows that you're more open to talking to everyone.
Yeah, the more you talk to people, the more they're likely to talk to you when an incident happens. If you stop and there's people walking through, the city, and you stop and you talk to people, and if something were to happen in front of them, they're more likely to be like, "Oh yeah, he went this way," or "Yeah, this happened." So, it promotes like just a healthy community, really. So, it's very important.
Yeah. And in your location, in Pennsylvania, when you
Mhm.
are in your uniform, how does the public or the community treat you differently versus out of your uniform?
Um, that's a really good question. So I'm 22. Um, People don't call me sir when I'm outside of my uniform. It's very
Oh, okay.
strange to me. So like when I'm in my uniform, people call me sir, and I'm always like, listen, I'm younger than you. You don't have to call me sir. Like I'm not really big on roles. I'm not big on titles or anything. So like you don't. But it's strange for me because um, that's something that took me a very well, it took me I'm still not used to it when people come up to me and say like sir, because when I'm out of my uniform, people would just be like, "Hey man," which is just a normal, and you have normal interactions, but people definitely view you differently. It just depends on like the community that you work in. Like I know in my area there's not really uh like there's a lot of people that like the police, and there's also people that just they haven't had the best experience with police. So you get different kinds of looks from people, the people that wave, and people that nod their head, and then you get people that just look at you. So it's different, but you know
Okay. And that was also going to bring me to my next question, like where you're located at. As you said, it's a bit of a smaller department, smaller jurisdiction. So, are the people there, are they more, would you say, friendlier, or are they, um, which side are they on when it comes to the support of police?
um I'd say that the community as a whole, I think that like there's the community as a whole is probably pro police, and just because like even if the community um mm, even if the community like doesn't understand what you're doing, they understand there's a necessity for you, so they might not like really love the police, but they understand that you're a necessity um to the community. I know that like every person that I've came encounter with is extremely respectful to me. I've had scenarios where that hasn't been the case, but for the most part, I'd say like the community as a whole is supportive and um, very um, helpful, and uh, I think they look at us in a good light. Yeah, I know like when I'm at the station, like people bring food to the station, so um, that's a good thing. And they bring water and stuff, so it's they definitely like us in the area. There's definitely some people that don't don't have the same opinion, but that comes with every job and everything everything in life.
Of course, yeah. And yeah, as you said, you've been working there for a year now. With that year experience, how are you liking the job? Is it more, difficult? Is communicating with the public more easily than you thought it was, or was it more difficult than what you thought it was?
Yeah, I love the job. It's honestly like I don't feel like I'm going to work when I go to work, and uh I hope everybody finds that with like their career choice, is that like when you go to work, you don't feel like you're going to work. And so like for me, I have a blast every time I go to work. Um, so in this year, I've noticed that there's like so many different things that go into the job. Like like every little aspect of the job, like there's like three different, like there's always different things that you have to think about with everything. Um, I'd say that like within the year, I've uh, I've like definitely been able like realized like I've always been a good talker. I've always been able to communicate very well with people. So that wasn't really an issue for me, and I feel like it's a little bit easier to talk to people when you're in a police uniform because people kind of just look to you and like want to talk to you. So I think it's important to like be approachable in scenarios like I said about going to the gas station. Like I'll go to the gas station, nod at everyone, wave, like, hey, how are you? And then like those people are very willing to come and talk to you. But definitely over
Wow.
the year, I've realized that a lot more goes into the job than just, doing what what you see on TV and stuff. So
Wow, okay. So what you explained right there, that was great because usually I get like more short-term responses, but that was a great answer, I think, especially that you've been working on the job for a year now. And wow, okay, that's a lot of responsibility that you had to carry. That's a lot of that's a lot of awareness that you had to be aware of, obviously. And,
yeah.
maybe not in your location, but how do you think the public and media um, misunderstand about policing? Maybe not particularly in your location, but, just in the general form of the US.
Yeah, so like a brief little thing about like my location. Our department, we're not allowed to talk to the media, like news outlets or anything. So like if we have our supervisors are the only people allowed to talk to them. So if they come up to us and ask us, we have to like, um, push them up our chain of command. But I think that a lot of the misunderstandings come from the fact that people don't understand the job. So like people don't understand like how we are trained to react and how we do react in scenarios that could be harmful for us, in scenarios that could be deadly for us. So we are trained to act differently, and I don't think that the public or people that are uneducated about law enforcement ever really or like the news media or anything like that, like they don't dive into okay, like this is the whole. Also, another big part of that is you know what sells for media. So you have a good headline, or do you have like the whole incident? I mean, in these scenarios, um I know I always look to see the whole incident and like see what actually happened, because a lot of times like the behavior from the police officer is shown and you're not seeing what led up to that. So I think it's important for the media to show the whole clip. I know sometimes it doesn't get as many views and it won't be as popular, but yeah, I think that's probably one of the most the two probably most misunderstanding is that they don't understand the job, and they don't uh you're only getting snippets and clips of what actually happened.
Yeah, that's exactly that's exactly what I was thinking of as well because the media obviously they're just a business, right? They're trying to sell
Yeah.
the information that people want to hear.
Mhm.
So, yeah, exactly. So what they do is they just get the little snippet of a whole 30 minutes
Mhm.
situation into 30 seconds and they get the part where supposedly the officer is doing something wrong rather than showing what happened beforehand, which I think is a really major problem when it comes
Mhm.
to yeah, just showing police on, media and on the TV and all that. It's really portrayed in a different way than it actually should be because it's not showing the whole story.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I'm not trained to be a media person, so I have no idea how to do their job. You know what I mean? And they have no idea how to do my job. So like it's hard for me to even comment on it sometimes because I'm like, well, I'm not really sure what their motive is here, and that's why we don't comment on anything, like any incidents that happen in our city because of you don't know the way that they're going to take it.
Hmm. And when it comes, to the media and the public misunderstanding policing, what does the infamous phrase "defund the police" mean to you?
Um, well, it doesn't mean anything good. I know like defunding, redirecting the funds. If you're redirecting the funds for police training, I'm 1,000% on board with that. Like, I know me personally, like I go and I try and take as many training classes as possible. Like when training classes are provided to me, I take them. Um, I've even spent my own money to go to training classes, like out of my own pocket. So that's I'm very pro training. I'm not I know that like I don't see our funding being cut really helping us progress as as like the law enforcement community. I don't see it getting better if you cut our funding. I don't see anything getting better if you cut the funding. You know, think about like a sports team. If you cut all their funding, how are they gonna buy uniforms and do all that stuff? So it's just um, I'm on board with redirecting the funding into training and stuff like that. I mean, defunding in general just has like it means that you're kind of weeding something out. So obviously, it's my career, it's my profession. Um, it's not something I want, weeded out, and I think it's a necessity for the community.
Exactly. Like, if I could add in, I just wanted to say, like, if you're gonna defund the police, it's just ultimately going to take the safety of the community itself, right? There's
Hmm.
so much training, uh, there's so many tactics and weapons that the police need to use in certain situations, and when the police are defunded, they don't have those they don't have that gear, they don't have the necessary items
Yeah.
needed to do that task, which
Uh,
is a really huge problem when it comes to, the defund the police movements, and I hope there hasn't been any in your area per se.
Yeah, absolutely. My area hasn't really been affected by that. Like, I got hired full time um in a department that so I mean it hasn't really affected me yet. I know that like a lot of people I've seen like a lot of other departments do like this stuff where their defunding is just like they waited for a little bit to hire people or they pushed people out and like you could see areas like Washington State that are now like hurting horribly for people. The city of Chicago is another place. The NYPD, I mean, they're losing people hand over fist. They can't get enough police officers because they did the defunding thing where they were like trying to hold off on hiring police officers. So now they're in a horrible spot. And you don't want to see any law enforcement agency in a horrible spot, but um, kind of happens sometimes when people think more about like public perception rather than like public necessity.
Exactly. And, while we were talking about the categorization of where the funding of police goes, like you mentioned, training, obviously,
Mm,
I'm sure many people could agree that police training uh, not necessarily needs to be, but it's definitely a good option to improve police training with funding. Um,
hmm.
and if you could share, how was funding toward the police usually categorized? For example, what mostly does the money allocate to? And in your location, as you could use that as an example as well.
Okay, so I'm not really sure where the money goes and where the money comes from. That's not something that really would be that I have access to or have any idea from. But I know that there's a lot of funding that we have that could actually, put officers through the academy. I know we're allocated so much money through our budget as a city or as a township that you get for training. So and like a lot of, I haven't looked at the budget or anything of that nature, so I wouldn't be able to speak on it. But I know like we need new cars every couple years, and we need without new cars, I mean, how are we getting from point A to point B? We need new gear, and like in my department, like you pretty much buy all of your own gear, and then we get a stipend at the end of the year to buy new gear. So I mean, I'd say like in my area, like they keep it under control. Everything's allocated and budgeted in very well, so it's not really um, an issue. I'd say bigger cities would probably um, lose sight of like that a little bit easier, just because there's a lot more people. You'd have to outfit everyone, but since like we're a smaller department, um, it's kind of like, okay, you get your own stuff, you get a stipend for it. Anything beyond the stipend is on you. So I know, like for me, like I'm taking a couple classes coming up that I'm paying for out of my own pocket and using my own money. So like I think that the fact that like um, there's a lot of misinformation about like the fact that we get new stuff all the time. Like I know my department, we have some cars that are pretty old, but everything gets the job done. So I'm very pro training though. I mean, that's honestly one of the things that like I want to build my career on, is going to more training classes and things like that. So I think it'll only help. And you know but they're more like specialized training, things like that.
Yeah. And so yeah, in your department in general, so do you think that funding is more needed, or is it more of a better option to have?
Oh, I mean, we need more funds than it's definitely a necessity to receive funding. If it's from the state, federal, local, to receive that funding is key. I mean, you have to think you have, in my department, I don't know, approximately, we'll say like 40 patrol, or no, 40 officers. That includes like detectives, rank, all that stuff. Um, and like every single person, I mean, like we share cars, we don't have take home cars or anything like that. So um, people drive these cars every day, like through our city, and vehicle maintenance alone has to be expensive, um, as well as like when you drive a vehicle every day, you're going to put thousands of miles on it fast, so there's going to be issues with that. Plus, I mean, like technology upgrades, like computers and things like that. Like it's important to have updated computers in your cars, because uh, all of that stuff. So, I mean, funding is always going to be a necessity um, for police, just so we could do the job more effectively. Um, I know, like we have some cars in our department that don't have computers in them, and like some cars that have been in accidents and stuff. So like we had to take the computers out of that car and put them in the other car, and things of that nature. Um, so always we could always use more funding. I know that. Um, I've I've never seen a well, I guess there's definitely some departments that are probably overfunded, but like our tax base isn't necessarily as strong as other um, areas around, so our local funding isn't as greater as other places.
Okay. And and this may be a little bit more specific toward funding, but do you think
Mm-hmm.
that officers themselves, like not like let's forget about the gear and everything. Do you think that
Uh,
officers themselves are underpaid, or do you think they're paid fairly?
it really just like depends on the department that you work for. I know like it my department I make a good amount. I mean, I'm not killing it every year, but like with this being my first year, I'll do well for a 22-year-old. Um, I'd say uh in general though, I'd say probably nationwide they're probably underpaid just for like the incidents and the everything that you have to deal with um on a personal level, your schedule. Your schedule can really get to be horrible at times. And I think like we pay a significant amount of time and we sacrifice a lot of things like, you know, like having a normal regular life. It's kind of hard to do when you work a schedule like that. So I'd say generally underpaid, but like, there's scenarios where the pay is good and so the one thing about law enforcement is that most departments have a lot of overtime and details that you could work. So I mean, if you feel like you're underpaid, you have a chance to work more. Um, so it like sometimes I think that your fate lies within like what you want to do with it. But also I completely understand that people don't want to work overtime because like it's a tolling job. So
Okay, and just to wrap this up, in the future, how would you like the image of policing to be changed? And for example, what actions should be taken for that change to occur?
hmm. um I'd say like really just um I'd love to see the media like follow some good things, that happen with police. I think that it may not sell as well, but like I know like even the media around here, like um I know you had Trooper Tristan Tappy on your show, and she was talking about Shop with a Cop, and the media actually did a story on that. So like it's good to see uh like when the media does good stories. But yeah, I I really think that like over the next few years it'll change. It's like a swinging pendulum, so it'll swing back to police being in the good eye, and but I don't really know what would change, what would have to change for it other than like just hoping that the media covers some good stories. I understand that bad situations happen and not every scenario uh, the police are right in, but yeah, maybe we can get like the full story being shown as well, or things of that nature. Just like a little bit of media accountability and stuff would be positive and would really help us out.
Of course. And before we end, would you like to add anything else?
No, I just want to thank you. Like what you're doing is awesome. I've listened to a few of your podcasts, and it's very good stuff. I have a question for you.
Sure.
What do you, or is this something that you're interested in career wise?
Not exactly career-wise when it comes to law enforcement.
Uh
I
huh.
am interested in practicing law. Right
Mm-hmm.
now, I don't know if you're familiar, but do you know what a police explorer is?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I'm actually a police explorer for my local police department,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm also a volunteer. So I do really appreciate the police and what they do for the community, which is why I really believe in this podcast. And this is why I like to change when it comes to bias, especially when it comes to practicing law. every single or most attorneys think that cops are bad, and I really want to
Mm-hmm.
change that. And yeah, that's my interest to practice law. So
Oh, that's awesome. Listen, I'm telling you, I've met some good attorneys, and I've also um, met some attorneys that are, in it for monetary reasons. But studying law enforcement will help you astronomically in your endeavors at law. So,
yeah, well, thank you again for taking your time to do
abs-
this.
absolutely. Thank you as well.
Thank you for listening and stay tuned for more episodes.